The mountains were quiet, covered with mist and shadow. Travelers rarely came this way, for the path was broken and the rocks sharp. But Kai, a young explorer, walked with slow, careful steps, his lantern glowing in the dark. He had left his village far below, following strange markings on old maps. The elders had warned him that nothing waited in these mountains but silence. Still, his heart pushed him forward, whispering that secrets were hidden here. Hours passed, and the night grew colder. Kai wrapped his coat tighter, his breath rising like smoke in the air. The wind carried a low sound, almost like a whisper. He followed it until the ground dipped into a hidden valley. There he saw the mouth of a cave, black and wide. It looked ancient, as if no human had touched it for centuries. Kai paused at the entrance, feeling a strange pressure in his chest. The cave seemed alive, watching him, waiting. His instinct screamed to turn back, but curiosity chained his feet. He raised his lantern and stepped inside. The air was thick, filled with dust and the scent of stone. His footsteps echoed like small drums in a giant hall. Deeper and deeper he went. The walls of the cave glittered with faint crystals, glowing like stars in the dark. It was beautiful, but also unnatural. Kai felt as if he had stepped into a world that was not meant for humans. Then, after what felt like an endless walk, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber. At the center of the chamber stood a crystal coffin, shining faint blue. Inside lay a girl, her body frozen in perfect stillness. Her hair floated like strands of silver, her face soft yet powerful. She looked as if she had only fallen asleep. But around her chest, locked tight in her hands, was a sword. The blade was unlike any Kai had ever seen. Long, sharp, and glowing with a gentle light. It pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Kai gasped, his voice shaking in the silence. Who are you?" he whispered, though no answer came. He walked closer, unable to stop himself. The crystal's surface hummed as he touched it. Warmth spread through his skin, shocking him. The coffin cracked with a sharp sound, lines racing across it like lightning. Kai jumped back, fear pounding in his chest. The crystal shattered in pieces, falling like broken glass. The girl's chest rose as she drew her first breath in 200 years. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing a deep silver. She turned her head and looked directly at Kai. The sword in her hands flared with light, forcing him to shield his eyes. Kai tried to speak, but his voice failed. He felt the cave shake around him, as if the mountain itself had woken. The girl pushed herself up, her movements weak but filled with grace. Her lips parted, and a single whisper slipped into the air. "It's mine," she said, her voice strong yet filled with pain. Kai froze, his heart racing. The sword's glow wrapped around her like fire. The chamber grew darker, except for her and the blade. She stood tall, though her legs trembled. Her gaze never left him, sharp and unyielding. In that moment, Kai realized she was no ordinary girl, and the sword was no ordinary weapon. The silence between them was heavy. Kai took a step back, his lantern shaking in his hand. The girl's eyes narrowed, her grip on the sword tightening. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice echoing like steel in the chamber. Kai could barely breathe. I was just exploring," he said, his words breaking like fragile glass. The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. For a moment she looked lost, as if the world around her did not belong to her anymore. Then her eyes hardened again. "You should not have touched the sword," she whispered. The ground rumbled as the crystals in the walls flickered like stars dying. A storm of dust and echoes filled the chamber. Kai wanted to run, but his feet would not move. He felt chained to her presence, pulled by something greater than himself. The girl's voice cut through the shaking cave. "For 200 years I have slept," she said, "and now, because of you, the curse begins again." Kai's blood ran cold. He did not know what curse she spoke of. He only knew one truth. The moment he touched that sword, his life was no longer his own. The cave was alive with echoes, the broken crystal still glowing faintly on the ground. Kai's heart raced as the girl stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the stone. The sword in her hands pulsed with light, as if it were breathing with her. Her silver eyes locked on him, sharp as blades, unblinking. Kai tried to back away, but the weight of her gaze kept him frozen. He had faced wild animals, storms, and even bandits on his travels. But this was different. This was something far older, something that did not belong to his world. The girl lifted the sword slowly, its edge humming like music. Her voice broke the silence, soft but strong. "It's mine," she repeated, every word sharp. Kai swallowed hard, unable to answer. He could barely stand under the strange energy filling the chamber. The girl's hand touched the sword's hilt, and the blade flared brighter. The light wrapped around her body like silver fire. For a moment, Kai thought she might strike him down, but instead, she staggered, her knees buckling. The sword's weight seemed too heavy for her weakened state. Kai rushed forward without thinking, catching her before she fell. Her body was cold, colder than ice, yet her skin burned with energy that made his arms shake. Her eyes flickered, confusion breaking through her anger. Why do you help me?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kai stammered, "Because you look like you need it." Her lips curved into something that almost looked like a smile, but it vanished quickly, replaced by suspicion. "You touched what does not belong to you," she whispered. "Now you carry a burden that cannot be broken." "What do you mean?" he asked, though he feared the answer. The girl's eyes grew distant, as if she were looking beyond the cave, beyond time itself. "The sword is bound," she said. "It belongs to me, and only me, but when you touched it, it chose to bind with you as well." Kai looked at the glowing blade, its light reflecting in his trembling hands. "But I didn't choose it," he said, his voice small. The girl's gaze sharpened. "Choice means nothing to the sword," she replied. "It only knows fate." A heavy silence filled the chamber. The ground trembled softly, dust falling from the ceiling. Kai's lantern flickered, as if afraid of the darkness pressing closer. Outside, thunder rolled through the mountains, though no storm had been in the sky when he entered. The girl placed her hand over the sword and closed her eyes. "I've been asleep for 2 centuries," she whispered, "sealed away by enemies who feared what I carried." Her voice grew colder, darker. "And now, because of you, I awaken before the world is ready." Kai felt his throat dry. Enemies? 2 centuries? None of it made sense, but the fear in her tone was real. "Who are you?" he asked carefully. Her eyes snapped open, silver fire burning in them. "I am Liara," she said, "warrior of the fallen stars." The name hung in the air like thunder. Kai stepped back, his mind spinning. He had never heard such a name, yet it felt heavy, ancient, powerful. Liara rose to her full height, her sword glowing brighter as her strength returned. Her presence filled the chamber, pushing against him like a wave. "You should leave," she said, her tone sharp. "This place will not stay silent anymore." Before Kai could answer, a deep sound shook the ground. It was like the roar of a beast, but metallic, hollow, and endless. The walls of the cave trembled as crystals shattered and fell. Something massive was stirring beneath the mountain. Liara's eyes widened, her face tightening with rage. "They're already waking," she whispered. "The Guardians?" Kai stumbled backward, fear gripping his chest. "Guardians?" he asked, his voice shaking. Liara nodded, her grip tightening on the sword. "They were placed here to ensure I never returned," she said. "And now, because you touched the blade, they will hunt you too." The sound grew louder, closer, the cave floor cracking under the pressure. Kai's lantern shattered, plunging them into darkness except for the glow of her sword. Liara turned to him, her silver eyes fierce. "You wanted adventure, human," she said. "Now you are part of mine." The ground split open, and from the shadows rose a machine taller than a house, its body covered in jagged stone and steel. Its eyes burned red as it locked onto them, roaring like thunder. Kai froze in terror, but Liara raised her sword, her voice calm, yet filled with fire. "This is only the beginning," she said, and with that, the cave erupted into chaos. The machine's roar shook the chamber, its steps heavy enough to make the ground split. Kai's chest tightened as dust and shards of stone rained down from the ceiling. The creature looked alive, yet its body was built from steel and rock, glowing red veins running across its arms like rivers of fire. Its single eye blazed as it locked onto them, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with its power. Kai stumbled back, his legs trembling, but Liara stood firm, her sword glowing brighter. Her silver hair flickered in the light as she raised the blade. The machine charged forward, its massive arms swinging like hammers. The impact of its strike sent a shock wave through the chamber, cracking the crystal floor. Kai fell to the ground, covering his head, his ears ringing from the blast. Liara moved like lightning, her weakened body still guided by instinct older than the machine itself. Her sword met the monster's arm with a sharp clash, sparks flying in every direction. The blade carved a line of silver light through its armor, forcing the beast to stagger back. But Kai saw the truth. It was not destroyed, not even close. The Guardian roared, shaking off the blow as if it were nothing. Liara breathed hard, sweat on her brow. 2 centuries of sleep had stolen her strength, and though the sword gave her power, it also drained her. She glanced at Kai, her eyes filled with urgency. "Get up," she snapped. "You are bound to this too." Kai's heart froze. "What do you mean?" he shouted over the noise. Liara deflected another strike, the clash echoing like thunder. "You touched the sword," she said, her voice like fire. "The bond is made. You cannot escape it." Kai shook his head, fear and disbelief colliding. "I didn't ask for this," he cried. Liara blocked another strike, the force pushing her back several steps. "Neither did I," she shouted, her silver eyes blazing. "But now you carry the curse." The words cut deeper than the roar of the machine. Kai didn't know what kind of curse she meant, but he felt it already. The sword's energy burned in his veins. When Liara swung the blade, he felt a pull inside his chest, as if the weapon was calling to him. It was not just hers anymore. It was his too. The Guardian raised its arm for another strike, but this time the sword pulsed in Kai's direction. The glow spread across the chamber, and before he could stop himself, Kai leapt forward. His hands gripped the hilt beside Liara's. The blade flared with a blinding silver light, brighter than before. The strike they unleashed together split the Guardian's chest open, tearing through its core. The machine staggered, roaring in pain, before collapsing into silence. The chamber fell still again, dust floating in the dim glow of the sword. Kai's breathing was heavy, his arms trembling. He had never fought, never even held a real blade. Yet somehow, in that moment, he had destroyed a monster older than his world. Liara looked at him with narrowed eyes. Her chest rose and fell quickly, her face pale. "You felt it, didn't you?" she asked. Kai swallowed hard, unable to answer. She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "The curse of the sword," she whispered. "It will answer to both of us now, but it will never let you go." Kai shook his head, his voice trembling. "I don't want it," he said. "I just wanted to explore. I never asked for this." Liara's expression softened for only a moment, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "Neither did I," she said again. "When they seal me here, I thought I would never wake, but the sword kept me alive, and the sword keeps you alive now." Kai's mind raced, his body shaking with exhaustion. Alive? Kept by the sword? It sounded less like a gift and more like chains. He clenched his fists. "What happens if I try to walk away?" he asked. Liara turned her gaze toward the glowing blade. "The sword will not allow it," she replied. "It will burn you from the inside until you return to it, or until you die." The words struck him like ice. Kai felt his chest ache, as though the sword inside him pulsed in agreement. He looked down at his hands, still glowing faintly from the fight. It was true. He could feel its presence, its weight, even when he was not touching it. Liara stepped closer, her tone calm but heavy. "This is not just a weapon," she said. "It is a bond, a curse, and a fate, one that ties us together until the end." Her eyes softened slightly, silver light dimming as exhaustion overcame her. "But if you live, if you fight, the sword will give you power unlike anything your people have ever known." Kai looked into her eyes, torn between fear and wonder. A part of him wanted to throw the sword away and run back to his village, to the quiet life he once knew. But another part of him, deep and hidden, felt the pull of destiny. He had always wanted more than the small world he was born into. And now, perhaps too late, he had found it. The silence in the chamber grew heavy again. The silence after the battle was short. The broken body of the Guardian lay smoking, its red eye dim, its chest cracked open like a dead furnace. Kai tried to steady his breath, his heart still racing from what he and Liara had done. But before relief could settle in, the cave rumbled again, deeper this time, as if the mountain itself was groaning. Liara gripped the sword tighter, her silver eyes sharp. "They have felt my awakening," she whispered. Her voice carried both fear and anger. "Their machines are stirring." Kai stepped back, dust falling on his shoulders as the ceiling shook. "Their machines? You mean there are more of these things?" he asked. Liara nodded, her gaze fixed on the shadows beyond. "Many more," she said. "They were created for one purpose, to keep me sealed, to destroy me if I rose. And now they will come for you too." The ground cracked, and from the walls, strange veins of red light spread like fire through the stone. Kai watched with wide eyes as symbols, old, alien markings, lit up across the chamber. It felt like the mountain had awoken from a long sleep. Liara looked around quickly, urgency in her voice. "We cannot stay here," she said. "The Guardians are bound to this place, and once they rise, no human can stand against them." Kai's legs trembled, but he forced himself to move. He followed Liara as she ran toward the narrow tunnel that led out of the chamber. The ground behind them shook violently, pieces of stone falling and smashing against the floor. The air grew hotter, the walls glowing with unnatural light. From deep below, more roars rose, mechanical and angry, echoing like thunder through the cavern. They burst out of the chamber into the twisting tunnels, the sword's light guiding their way. Kai struggled to keep up, his lungs burning. "Where are we even going?" he shouted, his voice bouncing off the stone walls. Liara didn't turn back, her voice firm. "Out of this place, before the mountain swallows us alive." The tunnels grew narrower, darker, and the rumbling behind them louder. Kai dared a glance over his shoulder and saw shapes moving in the distance. Tall, heavy machines with glowing eyes, crawling from the cracks of the earth like insects. The sight froze his blood. He stumbled, nearly falling, but Liara grabbed his arm and pulled him forward. "Do not stop," she said sharply. "If you stop, you die." Finally, after what felt like endless running, a faint light appeared ahead. Fresh air rushed toward them, carrying the scent of pine and cold wind. Kai's heart lifted as they burst out of the cave mouth, collapsing onto the rocky ground outside. The night sky stretched above them, filled with stars. But the peace of the mountains was gone. Dark clouds gathered unnaturally fast, spiraling above the cave. Lightning cracked across the sky, but it was red instead of white. Kai stared in awe and fear. "What is happening?" he asked, his voice breaking. Liara looked up, her expression grim. "Their awakening spreads beyond the cave," she said. "The Guardians were never just machines. They are part of a greater network, buried under mountains, seas, and deserts, all tied to my prison." Her hand tightened on the sword, her knuckles pale. "Now that I walk free, they will rise to hunt us." Kai felt his stomach drop. "Us?" he asked, almost pleading. "Yes," Liara said, turning her eyes on him. "The sword marked you when you touched it. You carry its light now. and to the Guardians, that makes you my equal enemy." The words sank into him like cold water. Kai had dreamed of adventure, of discovering secrets, but not this. He had not wanted curses, machines, and death. But when he looked at Liara, standing tall against the storm with her silver hair blowing in the wind, something inside him hardened. Maybe he could still run, hide, pretend none of this had happened. But he knew the truth. If he left her, the sword's curse would follow him, and the Guardians would still find him. Lightning struck the mountain, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The cave mouth collapsed in a shower of stone, sealing away the chamber. But Kai knew the Guardians were not trapped. They were free now, spreading out into the world. Liara lowered her gaze, meeting his eyes. "The war that ended 2 centuries ago will begin again," she said quietly. "And this time, human, you will not have the choice to stand aside." Kai's throat tightened, but he nodded slowly. He did not understand all of it. Not yet, but he knew one thing. The moment he touched the sword, his old life had ended. And whatever lay ahead, he was already part of it. Above them, the sky split open with red lightning. The enemies of a forgotten age were waking, and the hunt for Liara, and for him, had already begun. The storm above the mountains raged with unnatural fury, red lightning tearing through the clouds. Kai stood beside Liara, the weight of the sword's glow still burning in his chest. He wanted to believe this was all a dream, that when he woke, the cave, the machines, and the silver-eyed girl would vanish. But the storm, the rumbling earth, and the pull of the sword told him it was all real. Liara lowered the blade, her expression sharp but pale with exhaustion. Her eyes fixed on him, calm but unyielding. "You should know the truth before you decide your path," she said, her voice steady despite the storm. Kai frowned, fear and curiosity twisting inside him. "What truth?" he asked, his voice weak. Liara stepped closer, the sword humming in her hands. "You are not holding a weapon," she whispered. "You are carrying a curse." Kai froze, his throat tightening. She lifted the blade slightly, its glow washing across his face. "This sword is bound to me, but now it is bound to you too, our souls tied by its will," she continued. "If I take it back completely, the bond will kill you instantly." Her words struck him like ice. "Kill him? Just for touching it?" Kai staggered back, shaking his head. "That's not fair," he shouted, his voice breaking. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know what it was." Liara's silver eyes softened for the briefest moment, sorrow flickering in them. "Neither did I," she said quietly. "When the sword chose me, I was younger than you are now, and it stole everything from me. My freedom, my years, even my people." The weight of her words pressed down on Kai like stone. He looked into her eyes and saw centuries of pain, battles fought, and nights of endless silence. The thought of living with that kind of burden made his stomach twist, but then she stepped closer, her expression sharpening again. "You have 2 choices," she said firmly. "I can take the sword back fully, and it will end your life in seconds. Or you can carry it with me, share the curse, and fight." Kai's mouth went dry. Death or curse, no middle ground. He felt the sword's hum in his chest again, hot and heavy, almost alive. He thought about his small village, the simple life he once had. If he died here, no one would even know what became of him. But if he lived, he would be tied to this ancient war, hunted by machines and enemies older than his people. His legs trembled as he looked at Liara, her silver hair whipping in the wind, her eyes filled with both warning and fire. "You expect me to fight in a war I don't understand," he said slowly. "You expect me to risk my life for something I never wanted." Liara tilted her head, her voice calm but sharp. "No," she replied. "I expect you to make a choice. Your life ends here, or it changes forever." The storm cracked above them, thunder rolling across the mountains. Kai's heart pounded in his ears. He thought about the Guardian they had destroyed together, the way the sword had only shown its brightest when he and Liara held it at once. It terrified him, but also gave him a strange feeling a glimpse of something greater than himself. For the first time, he felt like his life was no longer small, no longer ordinary. Maybe cursed, yes, but not meaningless. He clenched his fists, his fear turning into something harder. If death was one path and burden the other, he knew which he would choose. His voice was shaky, but his eyes met hers without breaking. "If it's mine now," he said, "then I fight with you." The words hung in the air, cutting through the storm. Liara studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, her lips curved into the faintest smile, the first true smile he had seen from her. "You are either brave or foolish," she whispered. "Maybe both." The sword pulsed brightly between them, as if sealing his decision. Kai felt its warmth run deeper into his veins, filling him with both strength and dread. It was no longer hers alone, and no longer his alone. It was theirs. For the first time, Liara lowered the blade and nodded. "Then so be it," she said. "The sword has chosen its path, and we walk it together." But the moment was brief. From the distance came the sound of more guardians moving through the forest below, their mechanical roars echoing across the mountains. The earth shook with every step they took, trees cracking under their weight. Liara raised her sword once more, her expression hardening. "Do not mistake your choice for safety," she said. "By standing with me, you have painted yourself as their prey." Kai's stomach knotted with fear, but he nodded anyway. "I already knew that," he said quietly. The storm above swirled faster, red lightning tearing the night sky. Liara's eyes burned with silver light as she turned toward the coming sounds. "Then ready yourself, human," she said, her voice fierce. "For the war has begun again." The storm over the mountains stretched farther than Kai's eyes could see, red lightning crawling across the clouds like cracks in the sky. The guardians were no longer silent, their roars echoing from deep valleys, across ridges, and through the forests. Each sound shook Kai's chest, reminding him that the fight in the cave was only the beginning. Liara stood at the edge of the cliff, her silver hair glowing faintly under the stormlight. The sword in her hand hummed like a living heart, pulsing in rhythm with the thunder above. Kai came to her side, his hands still trembling, his breath heavy. He tried to believe he had made the right choice, but doubt gnawed at him like a shadow. "What do they want?" Kai asked finally, his voice quiet. Liara's eyes narrowed, her gaze locked on the horizon where red lights flickered among the trees. "They want me," she said, her voice cold. "And now, because of the bond, they want you too." Kai swallowed hard, his body still aching from the earlier fight. "Then how do we stop them?" he asked. Liara turned her eyes to him, her face unreadable. "By surviving long enough to reach my people," she said. Her words struck him. "Your people?" he asked, confusion filling his voice. Liara nodded, her tone steady. "Not all of us were destroyed 200 years ago. Some scattered, hiding among the stars, waiting for the day I would return." Kai blinked, his mind racing. Aliens, hidden people, a war that stretched beyond Earth. Everything he thought he knew about his world was breaking apart. And yet the bond in his chest, the hum of the sword, told him it was all real. A deep rumble rolled across the mountain as a guardian stepped into view. It was larger than the one in the cave, its body shaped like a beast of stone and steel, for legs crushing trees as it climbed toward them. Its eye glowed red, and each step sent a tremor through the ground. Behind it, more shadows moved in the forest, countless shapes stirring as if an army had awoken. Kai's knees weakened, his instincts screaming for him to run. "There's too many," he said, panic in his voice. Liara raised the sword, its light flaring brighter. "That is what war means," she said simply. "Numbers, fear, impossible odds, and the will to fight anyway." The beast roared and lunged, its massive claws tearing through stone. Liara dashed forward with speed that blurred her form, the sword carving a silver arc through the dark. The clash shook the cliffside, sparks flying as blade met steel. Kai stumbled back, shielding his face from the shockwave. But as Liara fought, the sword pulsed again inside Kai's chest, pulling at him, calling him forward. He hesitated, fear choking him. Then he remembered the cave, the guardian, and the truth Liara had spoken. The sword was bound to both of them, and if he didn't move, she would not last alone. Kai forced his shaking legs forward, his hand reaching the hilt as Liara deflected the beast's strike. The moment his skin touched the handle, the blade flared blindingly bright. Their bond ignited, the sword screaming with energy. Together, they swung, and the silver light cut through the beast's chest, splitting its core in one strike. The guardian let out a metallic roar before collapsing into shards of stone and sparks. Kai fell to his knees, gasping, his body aching from the force of the strike. Liara stood beside him, her chest heaving, her silver eyes glowing faintly. "You see now," she said between breaths. "The sword answers only when we fight together." Kai looked at her, sweat dripping down his face. He wanted to deny it, to run, but deep down he knew she was right. The power had only come when their hands were joined, when their fates moved as one. The ground shook again, this time from many directions at once. More guardians rose from the forest, their red eyes glowing like stars of fire, their steps shaking the mountainside. An army, endless and unstoppable. Kai's heart pounded, dread filling every corner of him. "There's too many," he said again, this time barely a whisper. Liara placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice firm. "Numbers do not matter," she said. "Strength does not matter. Only will." The guardians roared as they climbed the slopes, the storm above crackling with red lightning that struck the earth. The war that had ended 200 years ago was alive again. And this time, it was no longer just Liara's war. It was Kai's too. The mountain burned with red lightning, the storm roaring above like a living beast. From every side, the guardians advanced, their glowing eyes cutting through the darkness, their metal limbs crushing trees and rock as if they were nothing. Kai stood frozen, his chest pounding, his hands trembling against the sword's hilt. Liara stood beside him, her face calm, but her silver eyes sharp, unyielding. The sword pulsed again, its hum growing louder, demanding, almost alive. Kai felt the weight of it inside his veins, the heat pushing deeper, burning through his chest. He staggered, clutching the hilt tighter. It's too much," he gasped. Liara looked at him, her expression fierce. "It will destroy you if you resist," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Stop fighting it, or it will claim you completely." The guardians climbed closer, their roars shaking the cliffside, the ground splitting under their steps. Kai's fear broke into anger. "I never asked for this," he shouted, his voice raw. "I didn't want to curse. I didn't want your sword. I just want a life of my own." The blade's glow flared brighter, almost blinding, as if mocking his words. Liara turned to him, her voice quiet but steady. "You are right," she said. "You did not choose this, but the sword did, and now you must choose if you will let it consume you or master it." Her silver eyes softened, sorrow breaking through her strength. "For 200 years, I thought I would wake alone, fight alone, and die alone," she whispered. "But the sword bound you to me, and I will not let it take you without a fight." The guardians lunged at once, their roars shaking the air. Liara raised her blade, but her knees buckled, exhaustion from centuries of sleep pressing hard against her. Kai saw her falter, her strength slipping. Without thinking, he stepped forward, catching her before the blow could land. The sword pulsed between their hands, the bond igniting. The energy surged through them both, wild and fierce. The light of the blade exploded outward, slashing through the guardians in one blazing wave. Their bodies cracked, sparks flying as they collapsed one after another, the mountain shaking from their fall. But the power was overwhelming, the sword screaming in Kai's chest, pulling him deeper. He felt his mind slipping, his body no longer his own. Liara grabbed his face, forcing his eyes to meet hers. Kai, listen to me, she shouted over the storm. The sword is not only mine anymore, and it is not only yours, it belongs to both of us. Her words struck him through the chaos, cutting deeper than the pain. The curse does not end you, unless you give it control, she said, her voice breaking. You must claim it, claim us. Kai gasped, the fire in his veins burning like it would tear him apart. But then he remembered. Every time they fought together, the blade had grown brighter, stronger, unstoppable. Not when it was hers alone, not when it was his alone, but when they were bound as one. His grip tightened, his fear turning to defiance. The guardians roared again, countless shadows moving through the storm. Kai lifted the sword, his voice shaking but filled with fire. It's not just yours anymore, he shouted, his words carrying across the mountain. It's ours. The blade erupted in silver light, so bright it split the storm, tearing the red clouds apart. The guardians shrieked as the wave of energy rushed through them, burning their cores, breaking their chains. One by one, they collapsed, their red eyes dimming, their bodies falling into silence. The storm above cracked and broke, fading into the night sky, stars piercing through the dark. Kai fell to his knees, the sword still glowing faintly in his hands, his body trembling with exhaustion. Liara knelt beside him, her silver hair brushing against his face, her eyes filled with something he had never seen before, tears. She touched his hand gently, her voice soft. After 200 years, I am not alone, she whispered. Kai looked at her, the weight of what they had done pressing heavy in his chest. He wanted to speak, but the words would not come. The bond between them hummed quietly, no longer wild, no longer burning. It was steady like a heartbeat shared between two souls. The mountain was quiet again, the guardians broken, the storm gone. But Kai knew this was not the end. The enemies who had sealed her away still lived somewhere beyond the stars. And because of the bond, because of the sword, they would one day come for him too. Liara rose, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon. The war is not over, she said, her voice strong again. But this time I will not fight it alone. Kai stood beside her, gripping the sword tightly, his fears still alive, but no longer controlling him. For the first time, he felt something greater than dread, greater than the curse. He felt purpose. Together, they faced the dark horizon, the future uncertain, but their bond unbroken.